Welcome back to Hannity. Donald Trump, he's going to join us in just a few minutes. But first, earlier today, an unhinged President Obama, well, he lashed out at Donald Trump and those who dare to question why he refuses to use the simple term radical Islam. Watch this.
For a while now, the main contribution some of my friends on the other side of the aisle have made in the fight against ISIL is to criticize this administration and me for not using the phrase radical Islam. This is a political distraction, and that kind of yapping has not prevented folks across government from doing their jobs, disrupting plots, and protecting all Americans, including politicians who tweet and appear on cable news shows. We now have proposals from the presumptive Republican nominee for President of the United States to bar all Muslims from emigrating to America. And if we fall into the trap of painting all Muslims with a and imply that we are at war with an entire religion, then we are doing the terrorist work for them.
Here with reaction, author of See Something, Say Nothing, a Homeland Security officer, exposes the government's submission to jihad. Former DHS employee Philip Haney. Philip, now you started working for DHS in what, 2003, correct?
Yes, I was a founding member of DHS.
And part of your job is you were looking for terror ties. For example, you would identify people with terror links. In the early 2000s, you were profiling people with links to all of these terror groups. That was your job, right?
Yes, we were connecting the dots. We were focusing on individuals and organizations, networks across both the United States and with affiliations in foreign countries.
Then 6 years into your tenure in 2009, you were ordered to scrub the records of Muslims with these terror ties by our government. Who told you to do that?
I was directed from DHS headquarters. It's important to keep in mind that that was 1 year after the November 2008 Holy Land Foundation trial, the largest terror trial in American history, that irrefutably proved that these individuals from the Muslim Brotherhood front groups were in direct financial support of Hamas.
And that's the trial where CARE was named as an unindicted co-conspirator, if I'm not mistaken.
As along with the Islamic Society of North America and the North American Islamic Trust, three major groups.
Okay, so you were doing your job, identifying individuals, you built up a computer database, Obama becomes president, you were literally ordered to scrub the names of Muslims with terror ties that you had worked so hard to find. You believe you could have stopped what happened in Orlando and San Bernardino had you not been ordered by Obama's DHS to do this. Is that true?
Well, that was the first, what I call the first great purge. That was in 2009 with more than 800 records. The case that I'm referring to about stopping the San Bernardino and now related to the Orlando was 3 years later in 2012. It was a larger case called the Tablighi Jamaat Initiative. And it was another network separate from, but related to in some ways, the Muslim Brotherhood network that we just talked about.
So, in the case of San Bernardino, it was Saeed Farouk and his wife. You had identified that mosque as a place where you believe we should have been paying attention to, correct?
There's an entire network of those kind of mosques across the United States. And I found out a couple of days ago that the mosque in Fort Pierce is also related to the same network. Let me
ask you bluntly, could San Bernardino, but you were doing this great work, and I applaud you for what you have done. You were told to scrub, literally, the records of Muslims with terror ties. You had to do your job or you'd be fired. Do you believe in your heart that the information you had gathered, if you had kept that information, you might have been able to prevent the terrorist attacks in both San Bernardino and Orlando?
Well, to clarify, I wasn't told to scrub. My agency deleted them themselves. But yes, I believe I have a plausible premise that we could have stopped it by two major ways. Either Saeed Farouk would have been put on the no-fly list and not allowed to travel, or his pending fiancé would have been denied a visa because of his affiliation with an organization with plausible ties to terrorism. That's at least two different ways.
Can I repeat this one way? You did your job, and other people did their jobs and in comes the Obama administration, and they wipe out all the work that could have potentially saved the lives of Americans. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it's a fair statement. My records were tagged, and I got an email from all 67 of them when they were deleted, and they came back to my inbox exactly the moment when they were entirely deleted from the system.
Oh my God, this is unconscionable.
Next slide. Okay, so Philip will be here on Monday, August 29th. We have a handout on your chair. We'll be using the same link for Eventbrite. I'll have it live and active next week. That's about 5 or 6 weeks away. Plenty of time. You'll get ample notice through emails from me. Bring a friend. Okay? We have got to make this kind of stuff common knowledge. Really simple. That's the way to beat it. Next slide. This is one of the documents we were talking about, the explanatory memorandum, and everybody keeps listing the different groups. 29 Muslim front groups there are listed. The Islamic Society of North America is the #1 Muslim Brotherhood front group. Next slide. Michelle Bachmann tried to get to the bottom of this, at least start an investigation in 2012. And she asked for the Inspector Generals of several departments to investigate the Muslim Brotherhood's penetration into our government. She was vilified by fellow Republicans. Remember I said I would give it to you? We'll tell you when the articles are screwing up. McCain and Boehner took her to the woodshed. Pretty much. Why? Next slide. Because she brought up Uma Abedin. This woman, her parents were involved in the Muslim Brotherhood. There's some significant hold on our government with these people. And she's going to be another, so when people say, well, we're going to have a woman in the White House, that is the most dangerous woman to have in the White House. Uma Abedin. Next slide. Here's a Muslim, Al-Sisi from Egypt, General Al-Sisi, who has designated the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization, shut them down, got rid of them in Egypt, and is saying, America, what happened to you? You're on the wrong side here. So, he criticizes them. My question is, does that make him an Islamophobe? Just asking. Okay, next slide. So the bottom line is this: political correctness, willful blindness, ignorance of Islamic doctrine. Sharia, jihad, etc. will kill us all. We are jeopardizing our children. Next slide. So it's time to meet somebody who gets it, knows it, isn't afraid to speak it, and I gotta say, in a week, in a month, he's become a hero to me. General Michael Flynn has over 33 years of service in our nation's military, culminating as the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency and as the nation's highest-serving military intelligence officer. His experience is broad, and his expertise ranges in areas such as intelligence, counterintelligence, national security, and cyber operations. As EIA Director and Senior Military Intelligence Officer in the Department of Defense, General Flynn also served as a Commander, Joint Functional Component Command for Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance. As Assistant Director of the National Intelligence, he was responsible for international defense and domestic law enforcement and intelligence partner engagement. He also served as Senior Special Operations Intelligence Officer in Iraq and twice as a Senior Intelligence Officer in Afghanistan, serving nearly 5 years in combat. As Director of Intelligence for the Joint Special Ops Command under General Stanley McChrystal, he was credited with completely changing and then revolutionizing how intelligence supports operations, transforming a much-needed change in how special operations and more conventional intelligence and military forces could contribute to the defeat of Al-Qaeda in Iraq. This led to the development of innovative techniques for the vastly needed human intelligence and document and media exploitation changes required for effective interrogation operations. Additionally, General Flynn served as a Senior Intelligence Advisor to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Admiral Mike Mullen, Principal Military Advisor to the President of the U.S. General Flynn is currently CEO and Chairman of the Flynn Intel Group. He serves as a Principal Advisor to Act for America. We are so glad to have you. ACT, as you know, is a nonprofit, nonpartisan, grassroots national security organization with 300,000 members. As Brigitte says, she wants to make it the NRA for national security. He also serves as advisor to the Palo Alto Networks and Adobe, and a member of the board of directors of Green Zone Systems, among many others. He's also vice chairman to Drone Aviation. General Flynn holds 3 master's degrees, 2 honorary doctorates, and received numerous awards and decorations. And I'm sure there's much, much more, but I'm too tired to read it. Let's give a warm earthy style welcome to General Flynn.
Beverly, I'm not going to break this thing. Wow. This is very emotional for me. It's very emotional for me because of all the things that I've experienced and seen. And to be, to be honest with you, these last couple of weeks in my life, and my oldest son is here with me, this has been an unbelievable honor to have been, considered over the last, really last 2 months, probably last month, but definitely over the last week, to potentially hold the second highest office in this land. And it's just it's a humbling experience. It's an unbelievable privilege. And in the last 48 hours, I had a chance to speak again to Mr. Trump a couple of times, and because he's a great leader, and as great leaders do, they continue to talk to those people that are around them, advising them and giving them counsel, because I think people who seek, people who listen well will seek good counsel. So let me, I want to be really, really focused with you tonight, because everything you've seen, in fact, I was with Frank Gaffney earlier today, and some of these other people that are just real stalwart, servants of this country. One of the things that came up today that I was, in a conversation with right down here back at the convention center, somebody said, America needs a wake-up call. And I was like, wait a second, I'm alive, I'm kicking, I'm awake. I mean, I am absolutely awake. I am so alert to this enemy that we are facing. Now, I will tell you that I've spent most of my career in the region of the world that we're still engaged in. And so many of you maybe only caught it in the news, or some of you, probably most of you don't know, but there's an ongoing coup going on in Turkey right now. Right now, there's a coup. Yeah, and I was just literally going back and forth with a very great friend of mine who trained with us in the Turkish military. And the Turkish military is I don't know whether they're going to succeed or not, but the Turkish military, anybody that's switched on and paying attention, they have been just excised for many years by what really became a secular country, meaning a sort of a regular sort of nation state, and then began to move towards Islamism. This is Turkey under Erdogan, who is actually very close to President Obama. So I'm going to be very fascinated to see what happens, because if the military succeeds, and one of the things that came out of the military tonight, they're about plus 8 hours from here. So it's probably around, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning there. One of the things that the military immediately said is, we recognize our responsibilities with NATO, we recognize our responsibilities with the United Nations. We want to make sure that the world knows we want to be seen as a secular nation. This is the military. So yeah, that is what happened. President al-Sisi, who you saw up here, I served in 2007 and 2008 at, thank you, Michael, at U.S. Central Command, which is the command that takes care of the Middle East. And I was the head of intelligence at that time. President al-Sisi was the Director of Intelligence, the DMI, Director of Military Intelligence at the exact same time. So he and I were actually colleagues together, and we got to know each other. We worked very closely together. The guy he's another one that has trained for almost 30 years of his career right here in the good old United States of America. He loves this country. He was the one that stood at essentially the Vatican of the Islamic world, Al-Azhar Mosque, and said, should we expect 1.2 billion people to kill the other 7 billion people on the planet? And he took his religion, he took this ideology on. He took it on. And what do? We pushed him away. We pushed him away. I mean, this is a guy who, we are one bullet away from total anarchy in Egypt. I'm telling you, this is not a good place to be. This is not a good place to be. So I'm going to talk about a few things here. I'm going to not get too on my soapbox because, you know, if you watched me last night on Megyn Kelly, I was absolutely, and I'm going to tell you, I am not angry. I am not angry. I am committed. I have the resolve. And I love the fact that, this is what I love about Act for America, because this is a bipartisan organization. You know, and it's like I said, if you follow anything that I've said, and I'll tell you some of the things that I've said. But, you know, I don't vote for things. I don't like labels. I vote for America, period. That's what I vote for. I vote for this country. And in some cases, we have people in our political class, they don't know what the difference is between right and wrong. They don't know what the difference is between a lie and the truth. Amen. They just don't. And one of them is the Democratic nominee for our country and has a very difficult time telling the truth. I'm going to tell you a little story about Brigitte that she won't tell too much. You know, many of you don't know, she was actually, as a child, she was actually, their family in Beirut was targeted by a terrorist attack. And their house was crushed around them. A couple of days, they survived being literally buried, almost buried alive. Comes out of there, gets sent to a refugee camp with her mother. She had some of her family members killed. You know, one of the little stories that she tells is her mother having to take the stockings that she had in order to run water through the stockings, sewage water through the stockings, so they could survive. Okay? So they could survive. And her mother's telling her about who these people were that did this to you. So fast forward to 9/11, and she became a U.S. citizen. Thank God for this country. She becomes a U.S. citizen, 9/11 happens, she's got a daughter. And she turns to her daughter, and she says the same thing. She actually finds herself saying the same thing to her daughter that she was told when she was a young woman, a young girl. And it hit her like a lightning bolt at that moment, and she said, oh my God, I have got to do something different. I have got to figure out a way to serve this country. And thank God she did. I mean, I love that woman because she's filled with energy. Her message is very positive because it's about Act for America. It's about this country. And I will tell you, folks, because I study our country, this is what I do. I mean, I know the fabric of our society. And I also study world history. And let me tell you, we have to fight for our country. We always have had to fight for our country. We've always had to fight for our country. And what we should not do is we should not fear what we know to be very true. And that is, we must remember that this country was built on a Judeo-Christian set of principles, values, and morals. And we have a political class you know, I'm a soldier. I grew up in a family of 9 brothers and sisters. The most courageous person in my life, thank God, is my mother. My mother is no longer with us. God rest her soul. But she taught us a lot. My father taught us a lot. 2 things that I learned as a child growing up. Number 1 is called the golden rule. Take care of others like you want to be treated, or treat others like you want to be treated. And the other thing is to be a lifelong learner. And that's what we're doing here tonight. We're learning. We're learning. You know, in fact, you know what I would ask you to do is to go back and share and have debates and arguments with your children, your relatives, your neighbors, and talk about this issue. Talk about this issue. We have to fight for this country. We have to fight for this country all the time. And sometimes it's a political fight. Sometimes it's an economic fight, maybe. And sometimes it's what I call in my book is the field of fight, which is the battlefield. And trust me, that in my very simple language, the language that I grew up on as a kid, I try to explain what it is that we are facing, as well as the alliance that is anti-West and anti-United States of America. And that alliance with this crowd, with this radical Islamist crowd, includes Pyongyang, North Korea, Caracas, Venezuela, Havana, Cuba. I mean, look at what we're doing. Russia. Unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable. Iran is probably one of the biggest problems. And we have, as we just heard about again, this Iranian nuclear deal. You know, you can Google my testimony in front of Congress last summer, where I was just livid about this Iranian nuclear deal. As I stand up here tonight, mark my words that Iran will never sign this deal. Why should they? They're getting everything that they want. And Iran's national anthem is "Death to America." And they have said it multiple times since our Congress and our executive branch, our president, pushed for this deal. Money's already opened up and going to them. They have already violated the deal. They've already violated it. So here it is, since 1979, the largest state sponsor of terrorism, designated as a radical Islamist state sponsor of terrorism by the United States State Department. Since 1979, okay? Right up until last year, they were designated by us. All of a sudden, somebody sprinkled fairy dust on them or twitched their nose, and they're no longer a state sponsor of terrorism? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, what I'm telling you is that, we are challenged. We are challenged. And where I stand today, and this is where I really get into, so how do you fix this? Because there's so much about, the bad side of this, and you hear all the hate, and you see all these kinds of just vicious attacks. I mean, this latest one, it's unbelievable, unbelievable, the mindset. In fact, the mindset is you will either be enslaved, meaning you will be a slave of them. You will turn to their way of life, so you will convert. They'll give you that option one time. You can convert, or you will be killed. Those are the 3 options with this mindset. Those are the 3 options. That's it. In my years in combat, where we captured some of these guys, senior members of Al-Qaeda, and we brought them in. And when I say senior members, these are not 21-year-olds, 30-year-olds. These are like 45 to 60-year-old men with degrees, and they're on the battlefield, and they're leading and managing and financing and doing all these things. And we would capture them. We would specifically in the special operations community that I was in, we would go specifically after them. Some of them would run into Iran, Atiyah al-Libi. We ended up killing him, thank God. But he would run back and forth into Iran, and Iran would protect him, a member of Al-Qaeda, Sunni, a Libyan. So when people go, well, the Sunni-Shia thing, it's a Sunni-Shia thing, let them fight themselves. Yeah, I got some of that, but that's not always the case. This old adage about an enemy of my enemy is my friend. Their deeply held ideological beliefs, the one thing that they hate more than anything than each other is us. Okay, is us. There was a thing in one of the videos about a plan, this Muslim Brotherhood plan. We have captured a plan, same plan, 3 different times over the last 20 years. Once we captured their plans, the strategic vision of what they wanted to do for global domination. We captured it in the Balkans, in Southern Europe. A British force captured it. Eventually they turned it over to the United States, but it actually took them a couple of years to do that. We captured another copy of it essentially in Iraq. And a very brave young woman, reporter, who's a great friend of mine, Sarah Carter of The Blaze, she had another version of it, another copy of it, recently turned over to her by a source in Pakistan within the last year. And so when I look at these, because I look at them all, and I compare them, they're exactly the same. And what we know is that they have had a vision of doing exactly what they're doing on this game plan of theirs, if you will, that is leading them to where they want to be. Okay? And that is to get fully into the bloodstream of the West and right here in the United States of America. We have to fight for this country. We have to fight for this country. Yeah, thank you. There's a big problem in this country right now, and that is the truth, or the lack of it. The federal government, and I've said this for a number of years, in uniform and out of uniform. I mean, you know, you're talking to a guy, and it's funny because I'm able to stand up on a stage after I was fired. You know, I mean, you're talking to a guy who was told, you're done early. Why? Because I was challenging this notion of what it was that our administration wanted the American public to believe. So the President of the United States is up calling this vicious, barbaric, grotesque enemy a bunch of JVs. A bunch of JVs. At the time, my organization, we knew that this organization that we were facing had actually doubled in size. Doubled in size. In a period of 10 years. They went from 21 different organizations, a couple of them were mentioned up here, Boko Haram, one, Ansar al-Sunnah, another, Al-Qaeda, the base, another. But they went from 21 in 2004 to 42, almost 43 groups in 2014. And here the President is calling them JVs. Why? Because that was the message that he wanted to relay to the American public. Okay? And this is all after we had the Charlie Hebdo, all this kind of thing that was going on. And the following month, I'm sitting in front of the Senate in an open hearing, Senate Armed Services Committee giving my testimony, which was, it's directed testimony, and I was asked, well, you tell us what you think. And it was a pretty specific question about the enemy that we were facing. And I laid it out. I said, boom, boom, boom. Here's where they're at. Here's the countries that they're in. My expert judgment and assessment at this point in time is that this group has doubled in capacity. They are on the march. They are winning. And in fact, we're probably losing. And that was the end of my career. That was the end of my career. But I know that I can look at myself in the mirror. Some of the things that I'm going to be going around the country on behalf of what I believe we need. And I'm going to stop here in a second because I want to just talk a little bit about this book, because this was a very passionate thing for me. I sat last spring. My mother had just died. My mother took me through, you know, my entire life. I mean, I keep going back to her because of the things that I learned. And one of the things that my mother and I would talk about is my granddaughter. I have a couple of grandchildren. We talk about my granddaughter. My mother saw pretty much most of last century, right? She's married to a guy, Charlie, my father, World War II, Korea vet, you know, retired as a sergeant out of the Army, great guy, I loved him, tough Irishman. And I talk a little bit about my mother and father at the beginning of this book just to give you some sense of who I am, so you can judge me. You can judge me in the rest of what I tell in this story. And I would just tell you that my granddaughter is my vision for this country. She is my vision for this country. Because if my granddaughter lives to the age of her great-grandmother, my mother, she lived to 90, my granddaughter will live into the next century. Think about that. For many of you that have been around a while, you think about that. My granddaughter is 4. So by the time the next century hits, she's not even going to be as old as my mother. She'll be in her late 80s. And I hope that she lives that long, and I hope that she lives in a country that I'm still proud of. And so that's my vision for America. That's what I talk about. That's what I talk about. And I talk about what it is that we are facing. And the most important thing is the subtitle of the book is How to Win. How to Win. Thank you. If we don't talk about winning. Right now, one of the things that we do have is we have an utter failure of leadership in our country. You know, so we're here in Cleveland. We're here in Cleveland, and the big theme of this convention that's going to be here is going to be about leadership. It's going to be about leadership. I mean, strategic leadership that understands the complexity of the world has the guts, has the instincts, has the fortitude, has the resilience, the willingness, the determination to win. And winning means winning on all accounts. Why not? Why not? If we lose, you know, when you lose, you put your head down and you go home. When you win, you can write the history books. You can tell the stories. If we had not won against Nazism and fascism last century, most of the world would be praying at the altar of Adolf Hitler, folks. Honest to God. We would be praying at the altar of Adolf Hitler. Communism. We challenged the doctrine of communism for 40 years. And thank God when President Reagan came into office, he basically, everybody thought he was a big dummy. They really did. Remember Bush was running against him, and he picked him as his vice president. They thought Reagan was a big dummy. Thank God we had Ronald Reagan. And I mean, really. So the Cold War ended. Now, since the end of the Cold War, I'm going to tell you, we have made one massive strategic mistake after another, and that includes both parties. If you want to label it, if you want to say, you know, I mean. Let me tell you, there's some mistakes that were made over the last couple of presidents that are some of the biggest strategic mistakes, at least in this first half of this century, and we are going to have to work to overcome them. But one of the things that we can overcome is we can overcome what we know to be true, which is what I said earlier. And please remember that this nation was built on the foundation of Judeo-Christian principles. And if you keep in mind, if you have any sense of history, in the 15th and 16th century is when the New World, us, began to get resettled from people basically running away from the Christian Reformation in Europe that was going on. And it took a long time. And that's why I am a huge fan of one of the Arab world's leaders, and that's President al-Sisi, because he has called for a revolution. He has called for a reformation of his ideology, because he knows that we cannot have this on the world stage today. We cannot. And that's why if you were paying attention last night, that's my dare. I dare the Muslim world leaders, okay, and I put quotes around that because when I talk about a leader, I like to think it's somebody who actually has a positive view of what's going on in the world and thinks that we can, sort of all live together. But I know that that's not true. But the kings, the prime ministers, and frankly, these totalitarian regimes, and they can live the way they want if they want to live like that. We don't have to pay any attention to them, but I don't want them to affect me. I don't want them to affect my family. Period. So what this is about, it's about a big leadership. It's about big leadership and making sure that we do the right things. You cannot sit this election out. You cannot sit this election out. You cannot sit this election out. Okay? And I'll tell you one reason why. One reason why. And Abraham Lincoln talked about those who gave, the last true measure of devotion. Those who gave the last true measure of devotion. Which means those individuals who have sacrificed their lives for this country. I mean, I'm getting a chill right now just thinking about what I've seen. There are people that have sacrificed their lives for this country. For you. And to make sure that you have the privileges that you have. And one of those privileges, and it's the way we change our country. It's the way we change our country, and it's at the voting booth. And you've got to make sure that you do not sit this one out. And tell your friends, tell your neighbors, argue with them about it. Because they're going to argue and say, well, I can't take this guy or I can't take whatever. I mean, the FBI director, who is a friend of mine, a great friend of mine, we've done a bunch of things together, we've testified together. A couple of weeks ago, lays out in rhyme and verse how the former Secretary of State of the United States of America placed this country's national security not at risk, but at high risk. At high risk. Lays it out.
No prosecution.
And should have kept his mouth shut. What he should have done was should have kept his mouth shut. At the end, he should have just, nothing but the facts, right? Nothing but the facts. Lay it out and say, I'm not going to offer my judgment. I'm going to turn it over to the Attorney General. Put the burden on her. She's the Attorney General of the United States of America. It's not the FBI director's place to say, to prefer charges at that moment. That was so wrong. That's, and he knows that I've said this, but that's malpractice to me. I'm not a lawyer. You should have just said, here's what the FBI learned. Because what the FBI learned is that she lied to America. She placed our country at super high national security. Trust me, I know. I was living it, and there will be more. And frankly, months ago, over 6 months ago, on national television, I was asked, "What did I think?" And I said, "What do I think? I think she's totally unaccountable to the American public, and worse, she's unaccountable to herself, and she should step down for the good of this country." The country is shifting, okay? There's an undercurrent in this country, and it's shifting. Okay? The three problems in this country, three big problems in this country, is a little part of New York City, Washington, D.C., and Hollywood. Okay? And everybody in between feels undervalued, underappreciated. Come on. Now, I come from a little state. I come from a little town. And I have, we argue a lot in my family, a lot. I love it. I love it. We debate. We grew up like that. You fought for what you wanted. Whether it was a pair of socks, a plate of food, or a cot at night to sleep on. So I'm just telling you folks that you cannot sit this one out. We are facing what you've seen here and more and more. 1,000 cases right now in this country that the FBI is running, never mind at the state and the local level. 1,000 cases against this problem. 1,000 against this problem. Okay? 1,000. I mean, this is unbelievable. I don't see myself as being that old of a person. I think, when I grew up as a young kid in the 60s and the 70s, going through high school and college, and then my time right away into the military, and you kind of heard about it, you sort of knew about it, you read some history books about it, you study, the different things that I studied, and all of a sudden, whoosh, it like suddenly appears on my doorstep, right? I mean, and so now as I have gotten more and more into this, and over the last number of years, when I look at the battle plans that we have captured, when I have been part of interrogations of senior members of Al-Qaeda, and sitting there with them, and trying to look at them and say, and talk to them and say, I mean, why? Their version of the world is totally different than ours. And I'm not going to sit up here and try to explain exactly why, but it's an ideology. The last thing on this radical Islamism. Islam is a political ideology. It is a political ideology. The Islamic Republic of Iran, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and I could go on and on. Sharia law. Sharia law. It's the law. And then they have these things, maybe some know about, these hadiths, which is supposedly the spoken word of Muhammad himself. And the hadiths are sort of like a Bill of Rights. You should read it. It talks about how to abuse women. I mean, it talks about all this stuff. All this stuff. So this is unbelievable. And I will tell you, I am obviously passionate about this. But I'm not angry. I am absolutely dedicated to making sure that this country, while I am alive and fired up, is the country that I know it should be. And I do not fear the foundations that we were built on. I do not fear that. And I don't want you to fear that. And I want you to know that we can win this, but we have to wake up. You have to wake up. I'm awake. And you have to get fired up. And you have to understand how we do it in the United States of America. We have to protect what we know to be true in this country. We have to protect that. These people that are attacking our law enforcement professionals in this country right now, oh my God. The rule of law is a strategic advantage for this country. And when we start to see the rule of law break down, and we're going to see some things here coming up, folks, during this convention. We're going to see it. We're going to see it. When the rule of law begins to break down, that's when you can see, I can see pieces and the staging of anarchy. So anyway, I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for Act for America. And thank you for being this great. God bless America.
Okay, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do our normal, please line up over here. Patty, help me with the line. All right, we're going to start with the first question, since we agreed we would talk about it first. General, would you bring us up to date on the Wounded Warrior Project?
Yeah, I will. And I'll just say that I know the Barnes & Noble people are back here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Please go forward and purchase your book right now.
It's a two coffee cup book, because I can't stand those big thick ones. I got to get through something quick, so it's a very powerful read. It's very, it's what I believe, so I think you'll like it.
Once you've purchased your book, please come around here and start the line for the signing. We'll have a short Q&A, and then we'll go to the signing. So could you update us on Wounded Warriors, please?
Yeah, real quick, Wounded Warriors, which became a total disaster and was being ripped off. We have changed the leadership at Wounded Warrior. A very, very good friend of mine, Mike Lennington, he's a retired lieutenant general who I know very well. is now just went in as the CEO, and we're going to turn this. In fact, it is turned around. But Wounded Warriors was really ripping it off. I mean, talk about dishonesty and corruption, and it was discovered, and we immediately excised the crowd that was in there that was just doing a disservice to our veterans. So we have new leadership in there, and we're going from literally these guys were 95% putting money in their pocket. It was unbelievable. It just makes me sick to my stomach. So what we have created is 5% for the cost, and that's it. One individual to be paid just to run the thing, and 95% will now go back into the coffers of our Wounded Warriors. So this thing made me sick. Yes, ma'am.
You're now meeting a mom of 3 serving men.
Great.
So
Beautiful.
this is Patty.
My 4th son is enlisting today.
Great. Wow.
Thank you for your service. And the question that keeps coming up in my mind is if Congress, all policymakers at whichever level, and law enforcement are on the same page and we are fighting this war, actually effectively fighting this war on our soil against jihad, what does that look like in your experience? What would that look like here in America? Thank you.
You mean if we were allowed, if our government allowed us to actually describe the enemy the way they are?
Would that look like shutting down Wahhabi mosques? Would that?
No. What it would look like is it would look like allowing our law enforcement professionals, 2 of which are standing right up here, and there's a couple around the room, to do their jobs. To do their jobs. I mean, we've had challenges. We've had communists in this country. I mean, a long time. I mean, so challenge the doctrine. Do your job. Make sure they have the resources. Unleash them and their capabilities and what they can do from the federal, FBI on down to our state and local. Let them do their jobs the way they know how to do their jobs. Trust me, hey folks, the data is pretty good. The data is pretty good. So the answer is let them do their jobs. Let them do their jobs.
Hi, David Mustache. Permission to speak freely, sir? We both took the same oath, and it's hard to forget it all. I actually just want to make a short statement and a concern of mine, and you may or may not want to answer it. Back a few decades ago in 1965, when I graduated from college, the Army decided they needed me, and they pulled me in. In 1967, I ended up being the first lieutenant executive officer of Special Forces Camp on the Cambodian border. During that intervening period, I received a lot of training. Our training back then might be slightly different than it is today, but it was mainly to conduct operations behind the Iron Curtain. As part of that, we were taught how to take down a government. And what I have seen since 9/11 is forces to be in our country trying to take down our government. I'm very concerned over that. I do what I can for education. My concern, my concern is that a military-style attack will be made on Mr. Trump.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you're getting at in terms of, what I know is that we are facing challenges inside of this country. And my worst fear is with this crowd that we are facing, and I know the intent of those that are still overseas, this enemy that's overseas, they're planning and we see them, working with chemical weapons, biological weapons, and these dirty nuclear bombs, just a large device. So we have to just understand that those capabilities exist and these guys would likely use them. This is going to take some time. But the first thing we have to do is clearly define this enemy. Period. We have to clearly define this enemy. So thank you. Thanks for your service. I'm going to hustle through answers as quick as I can. I really appreciate the folks that are
My name is Joe Sherry. I have 2 questions for you. The first question is going to be kind of obvious. I want to make sure we're on the same page. But I'm going to assume that you've been in your military career in a position to command troops to go against an enemy position. Is Is that correct?
Yeah, it's been 5 years, almost 5 years.
Well, I know it's obvious, but this next question I want you to listen to very carefully. Have you ever commanded troops to storm an enemy position in the name of the Republican Party? That's not a joke.
No.
I didn't think so. But we have, I can explain it if you want, but we have an unwritten law in the Republican Party that says if there's a single Republican candidate running for office, and even though he's has a record of voting for unconstitutional things, we're still supposed to vote for him. I don't buy that.
You have to make your own decisions on what you're going to do. I mean, that's the beauty of this country, so I don't have any problems with that.
Thank you so much, General, for coming to see us. And I think our country is totally blessed that you were fired. I think it will end up being the very best thing that happened to us. My question is, I heard today that Iran is testing its 4th ballistic missile.
Total violation of the deal.
Exactly. Some little codicil addendum, whatever, but nothing that we agreed to in our Congress. So I wonder what you thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just unbelievable. We should never cut this deal, and there's so many bad things that were part of it. The administration, I mean, Ben Rhodes, the Deputy National Security Advisor, admitted that he lied to the American public. I mean, come on, you know, wake up, wake up. I mean, wake up. And pay very close attention. Pay very close attention. Well, we can do something. We can do something. You get it? You know, like I said, you cannot sit this one out. You cannot sit this national election out. If you do, we are likely to have someone who, if I did 1%, I would definitely be out of my can and probably likely in jail for the laws that were broken. Okay? That's what we're going to have. Are there people in this country that are above the law? No. No one is above the law. That's why we have laws. So we must get out and vote. Thank you.
All right, Daniel's made an executive decision. We're going to take 2 more questions. We're going to ask everybody else if they want to speak to you to please purchase the book and wait their turn.
Okay.
Thank you.
Whatever you guys want. I'll stick around for. I'm going to stick around for a bit. Go ahead.
Question for you. Napoleon went through that whole area. He cut off everybody's supply lines. I want to know, where is the food coming that's feeding ISIS and all that area there? It's not coming from there. They can't feed themselves.
Yeah, that's a great question. The financing that's going on and the food distribution that's coming in goes in through Turkey, primarily. Goes coming through Turkey. And there's an awful lot of theft coming out of Iraq and going back and forth in and out of Iraq and Syria. So this is this narrow strategy that we kind of have. We're sort of, it's very piecemeal. That's why I'm against the way that we are currently executing this strategy totally, because it's really not doing as much as we need to have done. So yeah, food, finances, I mean everything, water.
General, my name is Gary Parker, U.S. Army, 1969-1971, military police, 519 Battalion. My question to you, sir, is, do you believe that our president's core value is Islamic?
Yeah, I would tell you that you know, and I always go back to the conversation that I've had with my mom. Because she would tell me, and this is just in the last couple of years right before her death, and she talked about, how did you grow up, talking to me, how did you grow up? And I grew up with my father kicking me in the behind, telling me, get out and work, go do a paper route, go, you know, go down to the playground and play, get out of the house. I mean, to me, that's what an American kid does, or happens to an American kid. You know, you go and work from the time you know to walk. And you work hard for what you want. And I believe that the president that we have didn't have that experience, so he didn't grow up knowing what an American kid. Therefore, as you're developing values, they're just totally different. It's totally different than mine. I'm not going to sit here and say he's, Islamic, but I do know that he has a really difficult time. He has an extremely difficult time to include even those last 24 hours with the statement. I am going on national television tomorrow morning about this Turkey coup. And I'm really interested to see which direction this president takes if in fact the coup is successful. Because we should embrace the secular military that wants to stay aligned to the West. We'll see.
Could we give a big, humongous thank you to General Flynn?